Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brian Fonzi. Once again, I have come to bring to you the second part of my last video that I posted on the 22nd of December 2024. I'm still going on with the topic to do with how human spirituality is related to our economics, or how one is enabled to become rich or poor. So this is the second part. Now, after posting the other video, of which I'm doing a continuation as the second part, many of you were asking me how possible it can be to find that our economic being, or the way how we live economically or financially, has to do with spirituality. Now I am here to tell you that everything in life, everything in human life, or everything to do with life is part of spirituality. That's what I want to emphasize on, and I have very many thorough facts to back up my statements. Because in the other video, I was telling you what makes one poor and what makes the other rich. Now, let us look at how God is related to our well-being, whether financially or in other ways possible. Now, I'm here to tell you that your poverty or wealth is entrenched deep in your brain. Your poverty or your wealth, your well-being, your education, your good marriage, excuse me, and everything good and bad, it is deeply entrenched in your brain. Let us first interrogate the human brain. The human brain has got two parts. Now let's first go science, then we come to spirituality, then into the numbers, into the economics, and so on. So the human brain has two parts. It has the first part as hypothalamus. This is the first the first part of the brain that controls reflex actions such as winking, breathing, the temperature, the body temperature, and all those other reflex actions that the body does. It is controlled by the brain part called the hypothalamus. Now, then we have the second part called the encephalon. Now, the encephalon is the second part of the brain that controls the conscious parts of the brain. So it is the conscious part of the brain, the encephalon. Now, that encephalon, it is what builds the human civilization, because it is the conscious part of the human brain. Now, it is after there, when that part is well built in your brain, that builds civilization. And what is civilization? Because it is very important to understand what is civilization. Now, in all this, we are trying to build on the welfare or the well-being or the financial status of a human being. We are starting from there. Then we shall come to see how does God come into this. Now, civilization, it is explained as the development of the cooperative instinct. That is civilization. Because that's why you hear people talking about civilizations, the first civilization, the second, the third. I think we are now living in the fifth civilization, or what you would call a revolution, the global revolutions. Now, if we have seen that civilization is the development of cooperative instinct, and we have seen that there is a part of the brain that builds the civilization, now that tells us thoroughly that it is one's brain's formation, how naturally it was built, that determines the being of that person. I don't know whether I'm clear here. Once you have good quantities of concentrated encephalons in your brain, entrenched there by God the Almighty, because He's the creator of your body and that brain, then the more chances you get to become well off in this life. Well off how? Well off from the decisions you make, well off on how you decide to work out your things, well off on who you decide to deal with, and well off on how you decide even to be led. Because your well-being has much to do with what you do, how you do it, who leads, where you live. I mean, who leads the society from where you're working from. For example, what you do in an African country, the same thing if done in, say, a European country, you would earn much better because of the environment. So the environment is very important. Now, how that environment is controlled also dictates on your well-being. So even how you choose a leader to lead you determines your being, either well-being or poor being. I hope I'm clear on this. Now, that we have seen that it is the brain, the composition, because very many times African elites and some researchers have come to agree that the biggest problem of we Africans has been the mindset, but they have failed to interrogate how do we come to that mindset? How is that mindset formed? Now, this is what I've brought to you. Our poor or right mindset is formed from our natural brain, our natural being of the brain, how God created it. That if you have a brain well built with encephalons well concentrated in your brain, then that conscious part of your brain will help you to build civilization, and that civilization takes you to the good being. It is as simple as that. There's nothing else apart from that. Now, so what went wrong with us, we Africans? What is wrong with us, our thinking, our leadership, our working, our everything that has made us become poor? When we live in abundance, wealth, natural wealth created by God, but we cannot control it, we cannot explore it and become wealthy as our cousins, our white cousins in Europe, in America, in the Gulf world, in Asia. What went wrong with us? Now, very many years ago, some very intelligent people decided to interrogate or to ask themselves how this world is controlled, how life is controlled, who controls it, what makes things happen, and so on. Now, that was the creation of philosophers. That is how they were created. Now, these philosophers, in the first place, there were some people who were called the sophists. These sophists are the ones responsible of making the first laws that governed human beings. The first laws, the first set of laws in existence were created by the sophists. Then after the sophists, there came some philosophers like Rene Descartes and Jeremy Bentham. Those are some of the examples. Now, these philosophers, they tried to explain to people that there is somebody mighty, that there is somebody who controls everything in life. Now, then people became divided between rationalists, or those who had the organic thinking, and the metaphysical line of thinking. Now, the organic line of thinking, or the rationalists, were of the view that one has to work. You plan, work, and pray to God to bless your work. Those were the rationalists. Then those of the metaphysical line of thinking, those were more religious. Now, when we come back to our former religions, because religions had already taken place in some parts of this world, they were in existence. Now, some of them, those of the metaphysical line of thinking, their reasoning was that everything is done and controlled by God, so you don't have much to worry. You wait for God to show you what to do it, and succeed. Now, there was a discussion and a great debate between these two lines of thinking, the rationalists and the metaphysical line of thinking. Now, that produced other philosophers such as Immanuel Kant and Bishop George Berkeley of England. Bishop George Berkeley was a bishop in the England Church. He was born in 1685 and died in 1763. So this Bishop George Berkeley, he was from the metaphysical line of thinking and did a great deal of work in formulating how religion would be spread across the whole world and how it would control the human way of thinking. I am here building and trying to show you how Africa was captured and how we got our problems to be in a predicament in which we live today. Now, after the work of Bishop George Berkeley and his fellow philosophers like Immanuel Kant, indeed, religion was used as a rope or as a tool by which to capture the human beings and control them in their way of thinking and put them on the same line. Now, here, as this work was being done, some people reasoned and found that one becomes intelligent according to how he or she relates with God the Almighty. If you remember, some of the words of a great physicist, Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein once observed that the more closer one comes to God, the more intelligent he becomes, and vice versa. Those were the observations of a great physicist, Albert Einstein. So that tells you that even scientists, great scientists, they knew that it is God the Almighty who decides, who controls your thinking, who controls everything, and decides on how you go through this life. Now, when these people came with their religion, our cousins from the Gulf, the Arabs, our cousins from Europe, the whites, when they came with their religion, in which they had built their own beliefs, like the Catholic Church is full of the Roman beliefs. The Romans are human beings, they are not even angels from heaven. The Anglicans, me being an Anglican, the Anglicans from England, they had their religion well entrenched with their own beliefs as the English people. That is why it is even heard by the Queen or the King of England. The Arabs had their religion entrenched with their own Arabic beliefs. Now, they brought these religions to earth. After bringing those religions to us here in Africa, they told us that our way of communicating to God, the channel by which we come or go to our God, the Creator, is satanic and devilish. We are told to abandon our way of communicating to God and take on their way of communicating to God. And it affected us so greatly, because if you're a father and you have a child who does not relate well with you, that father hardly gives so much inheritance to that child. I normally make long videos. I would like to make this one a bit shorter because of time. But I have always told my fellow Africans, not only even Africans, even Black Americans, the black race in this world, that there is something wrong with us. There is something wrong with us, how we relate with our God the Almighty. And we have to reconsider and come back to our roots and pray the right way, how we are supposed to pray. Now, someone will come and ask me that, now, how does economics relate to this, or how does my financial status relate to this? I have told you that how you make decisions on what to do, even what course to study, even where to work from, I mean every decision in life, it starts from your brain. And I've shown you how your brain is composed, the composition of your brain, and what enables you to do the right decisions or the right thinking. Because many times our greatest problem here in Africa has been the way how we think, the mindset. That's why when you talk of mindset, many people will agree, but they never interrogate or never ask themselves on how that mindset is arrived at. When you look at our leaders in Africa, the decisions they make, even we at an individual level. For example, I've always asked, why, for example, in Uganda would a multi-billionaire invest about 15 or 20 billions in a building, and that building will create only 2 or 3 jobs for those who just take care of the building and nothing much? Whereas 20 billion Uganda shillings, if we invested in an industry or in a factory to process some of the materials here in abundance in Uganda, 20 billions would create more than 100 or 200 jobs. Then at the end of the day, you hear people crying that they don't have jobs and blaming governments, even some related to those billionaires whose billions are not creating jobs. And when we come back to our governments, the same applies to our governments or our leaders, because they have even failed to find a way on how to advise those billionaires. Like you see in the US or in other developed societies, you have the Wall Street. The Wall Street rockets and looks for these people with money and advises them and shows them the right business to do and how it can create jobs and this and that and how the economy can be developed. That's what the Wall Street does. See? But here, what do we do here? Nothing much. So the reasoning, the thinking, the IMF, World Bank comes here and tells us to collect taxes, borrow money externally, and get aid to run our economies. And that is total nonsense. It does not make any sense. For a serious economy to thrive and live, you have to collect taxes, borrow money, preferably internally in your own country, and print money to close the gap between the money collected from taxes and that borrowed, and run the economy. I will not cease to talk about money printing in all my videos to do with our economics here in Africa, because it is the only secret, it is the only part that the IMF and the World Bank has refused us to do. And for them, that's what they do. Because, for example, after President George Bush messed up with the US economy during the Iraq war and whatever, in 2008, the US economy was nosediving. they faced a serious an economic recess. And what did they do? They printed 80% of their GDP. They printed 12 trillion US dollars, and put that money back into the economy to give it life to breathe. Most of its big companies like General Motors and whatever were laying off workers seriously. The economy was collapsing. That is how they breathed life and lived. And the economy now is moving. But you come here, we have economists going to universities, we have people educated with PhDs here in Africa, and they tell us, what you do, you have to borrow money from the IMF at whatever interest. We don't even have powers to negotiate. We don't have negotiation powers. They tell you, you have now to get aid from Siju where. When will an African man or an African woman stand and reason the right way? The question becomes, when you reason the right way, what happens? The CIA, the MI6, and other these European, excuse me, and NATO organizations, they come and assassinate you. After assassinating your leader, what happens? Your fellow Africans will just keep quiet. You go to the grave silently, and that's the end of you. That's what they have done to Africa. That's what they've done to Latin America. Let me give you an example of Latin America. In a country called Guatemala, there was a man called Miguel Digolas Fuentes. Digolas Fuentes was a military officer who later on was elected as the president. But before he was elected as the president, in his memoirs, he tells us that he was once approached by a gentleman called Walter Turnbull. Walter Turnbull had come with 2 CIA agents who approached him in his office and told him that he was popular and they would like to support him and make him the Guatemala president, deposing or removing President Jacob Arbenz. Now, the intelligent Digoras Fuentes asked those CIA agents what he would do for them in return. They told him that first of all, he would have to pay every penny that was used in the undertakings to bring him back to power. Secondly, he was to destroy the Guatemalan Railway Corporation and support the transport system that the Americans were building and bringing to Central America. Digoras Fuentes refused. He refused. After refusing, he missed on becoming the president. What did the CIA do? The CIA went and supported another military coup that was led by another person that accepted their conditions. That is General Castillo Armas, and he became the president. Later on, he was also deposed in another military coup. After being removed, there was elections and Digoras Fuentes came to power. But later on, he was also overthrown in a military coup. That is how the country was messed. That is how it was messed up. And the whole of Central America. The same applies to Africa. From Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah being overthrown by General Kotoko. In Guinea, in Uganda here, President Milton Obote being overthrown by Idi Amin Dada. By the financial year of 1967-1968, Uganda's economy was on steady growth. It was among the best in Africa. It was in the top 3. By then, a dollar, the exchange rate of a dollar was at 3 shillings, Uganda shillings. Things were moving on well. But what did America do together with Israel? It was CIA, that is America, MI6, in Britain, and Mossad, Israel. They backed them in and caused the military coup here and overthrown Obote, and ever since then, Uganda has never looked back. So, why would somebody come and tell you to create chaos in your own house, in your own father's house, because you stand to benefit something and you agree and destroy, retard the growth of your father's family for eternity because of the small gains you are going to get at a personal level? Why can't we get people like Digoras Fuentes? Why? Why is it that when we get such a people like President John Pombe Magufuli of Tanzania, may his soul rest in peace, that they stand against these imperialists? They stand against them and refuse to succumb to their demands and directives. That when these imperialists continue and kill our leaders, we don't even tear off these people. We don't even go to the streets and make chaos and even go to their embassies, tell them this is wrong, and we tell them to go packing and go back to their countries. Why can't we do so? Why do we keep quiet? Why do we keep our tails between our legs and keep quiet when our leaders are being killed? Imagine Africa with Patrice Lumumba in Congo not interrupted, with Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana not interrupted, with all these leaders who were assassinated, who were overthrown at the time when Africa was getting independence. Imagine Africa with those leaders uninterrupted, what Africa would look like today. The reasoning, the decision making I was talking about, our brain formation, that is where the problem emanates from. I ask, I request, I plead with all the black race to go back to our roots. Pray to God the Almighty through the ways how our great grandfathers used to pray to Him. Bring back that knowledge. Bring back the favors of God the Almighty. Pray and have our own angels surround us, empower us to think, reason, do the right way, and prosper in life. And we manage to sit on the same table with our cousins from Americas, from Europe, from Asia, and from the Gulf, and sit on that table as equals. May God bless you.